Ladies and gentlemen, we have breaking news that will impact the nation.
Good evening. I'm coming to you with breaking developments in what has become one of the most serious. President Trump reportedly leaning towards military action against Iran following a brutal crackdown on protesters. We'll break down this developing crisis. Trump dropped a bombshell, 25% tariffs on any country trading with Iran. This is economic warfare. In a social media post, the president announced that any country doing business with Iran will face a 25% tariff on its exports to the United States. Trump is using tariffs as a weapon. This is a massive escalation, potentially affecting trillions in global trade. Trump is saying to stop buying Iranian oil or face massive tariffs. This is economic warfare on a grand scale. Both the US and UK have issued urgent travel warnings for Iran, underscoring how dangerous the situation has become. The UK and US have issued urgent warnings for their citizens in Iran. The advice, get out while you still can, by land if necessary. The US State Department has issued an urgent warning for US citizens in Iran to leave immediately, suggesting they use land routes, not air. These are urgent warnings from Western intelligence. American and British citizen Iran, potentially military action. If you're an American or British citizen in Iran right now, your government is saying, get out while you still can. This tells us where the crisis is heading. This also tells us something about where this crisis might be heading. If Western governments are this concerned about their citizens' safety, this also tells us something about the possibility of a significant escalation that would put any remaining Westerners in Iran at extreme risk. Please like and subscribe to our channel and follow up for upcoming developments. So where do we go from here? Let me walk you through the possible scenarios, from most optimistic to most concerning. We examine 4 scenarios for the Iran crisis: a diplomatic breakthrough, limited strikes, a broader campaign, or a dangerous status quo. The U.S. could offer sanctions relief in exchange for concessions, but trust is low. More likely, we see gradual escalation with no resolution. The risks are obvious. Iran is targeted certainly against Kurdi and Seatul. Even limited strikes could quickly escalate into something much larger. Trump is considering limited strikes on Iranian Revolutionary Guard targets. The goal is to punish the regime without a full war, but retaliation is a serious risk. The U.S. could punish Iran for killing protesters, but strikes risk retaliation, escalating into a wider war that devastates the opposition. Any strike on Iran risks a wider war. Retaliation could close the Strait of Hormuz and trigger a global economic crisis. Would strikes help protesters or give the regime an excuse to crack down harder? Hawks see a chance to strike, but the risks of escalation are enormous. This broader military campaign could degrade Iran's capabilities, but the consequences would be enormous, risking a global economic crisis. Hezbollah could attack from Lebanon. Houthis from Yemen. Iran, as the most likely scenario, is a gradual, dangerous escalation. And then what? A military campaign would strengthen hardliners and devastate the protest movement. The most likely scenario is a slow-rolling crisis that could spin out of control. The Iranian people, even those opposed to the regime, would likely rally around the flag. This is the most likely scenario. An uncomfortable middle ground. Threats from both sides, limitations, tightening sanctions, ongoing protests met with crackdowns, and diplomatic talks going nowhere. This crisis could continue for months, with neither side willing to back down. The real danger is a miscalculation that spirals out of control. Escalation. Wars often start not because anyone wanted them, but because a crisis gradually spun out of control. As we approach the end of our analysis, I want to step back and ask some bigger questions about what this crisis tells us about the world we're living in. When protesters are killed, it's hard to simply look away, but intervention carries risks of unintended consequences. The willingness to continue protesting, despite brutal crackdowns, indicates deep, widespread dissatisfaction. Trump's Iran policy is classic: maximum pressure, unpredictability, threats of force, and a willingness to negotiate. It's a high-risk approach. Pulled from the Iran deal, harsh sanctions, and the killing of General Soleimani. Strategic brilliance or dangerous incoherence? We'll analyze the risks. A world where American power, while still enormous, is no longer on countries can trade with. The ability to cut off a country from the internet shows unprecedented control, but also its fragility. The question is whether the regime can survive by force alone. The willingness to continue protesting despite brutal crackdowns in Trump's Iran policy is classic. Maximum pressure, unpredictability, threats of force, and a willingness to negotiate. It's a high-risk approach. Pulled from the Iran deal, harsh sanctions, and the killing of General Soleimani. Strategic brilliance or dangerous incoherence? We'll analyze the risks. Willing to send Fred Sanyapolt a world where American power, while still enormous, is no longer on countries can trade with. The ability to cut off a country from the internet shows unprecedented control, but also its fragility. The question is whether the regime can survive by force alone. The willingness to continue protesting despite crackdowns indicates deep dissatisfaction. The burning of mosques is symbolically abnormal. The burning of 53 mosques in an Islamic republic is symbolically enormous. It has sophisticated security services and a ruthless police violence, reveal a broken social contract. But 646 protesting despite brutal crackdowns indicates something different about dissatisfaction. Symbolically enormous. The social contract has broken down. Can the regime survive by force alone? But it's clear that the social contract between the Iranian government and significant portions of its population has broken down. The question is whether the regime can survive by force alone, or whether eventually the pressure becomes unsustainable. As we close tonight, here's where things stand. At least 646 people are dead in Iran, killed in protests that have spread across the country. The Iranian government has responded with a brutal crackdown, cutting off internet and phone access and mobilizing its security forces. Back in talks continue as both sides are doing business if Iran will continue to follow the phone crisis. Iran says it's ready for war, but also for dialogue. Trump has announced 25% tariffs on any country doing business with Iran. The world is watching. The UK and US have warned their citizens to leave Iran immediately or if we're heading toward military confrontation. For 646 people, the debate is moot. For millions of Iranians, will protests produce change? For the world, can leaders de-escalate? We'll follow this closely. They've paid the ultimate price in this crisis. The question is whether protests will produce change or be crushed. And for all of us watching from around the world, the question is whether leaders in Washington and Tehran can find a way to de-escalate. Decisions made in the next few days could determine whether we're looking at a diplomatic resolution or the beginning of another major war in the Middle East. That's our analysis for tonight. Thank you for spending this time with me as we work through this complex and developing crisis. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time.